Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of Soundbites for Immigration Success. My name is Monica O'Brien. I am the Manager at Education and Stakeholder Engagement at CAPIC. And we bring this podcast series for you so you can get to know your fellow consultants, hear their story and their challenge, and perhaps how they've solved it, and their final takeaway piece of advice that they might have for you. And I am so excited to have us with us today, Roxanne Jessome. Hi, Roxanne.
Hi, Monica.
It is so lovely to have you here. Roxanne, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to become an immigration consultant?
Well, first, thank you for inviting me to participate. This is really fun. Um, what inspired me to be, it's kind of a long story. I had immigration coming at me from two different ways, personally and professionally. Prior to being an immigration consultant, I was a recruiter, specifically in the hospitality industry. And so we're going back more than a decade now, to the late teens, 2000, well, actually not the teens, 2006, 2007, 2008. At that time, the oil boom was going on in Alberta, and I'm located in Western Canada. And the employers that I worked with to recruit managers and senior level positions began asking me to help them recruit temporary foreign workers. And I said no. And then they asked me again, and I said no again. And then they asked me again, and I'm like, okay, well, what's going on here, guys? Like, what is the problem? And there were these scandals. There was the Maple Leaf scandal, where it was discovered that these workers working in food processing for Maple Leaf Foods had paid, they were making, I don't know, $18 an hour, and they had to leave Canada. They told their employer because they couldn't afford to pay off their lawyer, who had charged them something like $5,000 to $10,000 to find a job in Canada. And there was all this shady stuff happening. And my employers were big national employers. They did not want to be in the news for the maltreatment of temporary foreign workers, and they just didn't trust foreign recruiters. And so they had worked with me for many years, and they wanted me to recruit for them because they know that they knew that they could trust me. So I partnered with a well-renowned immigration lawyer. I did the recruitment. The immigration lawyer did the immigration work. And everything worked well. And in the midst of all that, I met somebody who I later married, and they were from another country. And so then I sponsored them for permanent residence to Canada. And so I had it coming to me personally and professionally. And while I was working with the lawyer, I was the person who knew the worker, who knew the employer. So I was that middle person. And even in the context of helping the workers that were hired, that were selected by the employer to apply for work permits, I was still that middle person. So I was learning all these things from the immigration lawyer by osmosis. The immigration lawyer it's Rudy Kisher from Maynard Kisher Stojkovic, and Rudy's a good friend of mine. And so he was extremely generous with his knowledge, and I just became really, really interested in this. Plus, I was going through it personally, and I thought, I want to learn this. And I decided to go back to university, and I went to UBC and took the course.
Wow. So it was a bit of a work in progress for you to sort of come to that conclusion.
It took me a
So,
couple of years before I was like, okay, I'm really, really, I realized while I was working with these temporary foreign workers that I was really interested in the immigration side of the work. And I wasn't authorized to do it, but I was really interested in it, and I was learning so much, and I just had a million questions all the time for Rudy because I am that person. And he's like, why don't you take the program, Roxanne? And he's the one who told me about the program. So I was like, oh, okay. And I just took the program.
and we were talking before we were on air, and you were saying you became licensed in 2009. So you're
Mhm.
going into your 15th year.
Yeah. Uh,
Wow. Time sure does fly.
Time flies whether you're having fun or not. And the other thing we were talking about is just how much bigger immigration law is compared to 15 years ago. It's massive. It's 3 times the size of what it was then, and it was hard enough then. So, so yeah, it's quite a big difference.
Imagine now. So before we sort of get on to our other questions, I just want to do a couple follow-up ones. So you started off as a recruiter and became an immigration consultant, and I know you did both for a while. Where would you say your greater love was, the immigration consulting side or the recruitment side?
Definitely immigration consulting. So that is not, being an immigration consultant and a recruiter at the same time was not an easy marriage. I had 2 different regulators and I had 2 different sets of clients in some instances. So it was a very careful navigation between the 2. So regulator, oh God, I was originally regulated under the original regulator, just like you, which was, that's a story for another day. But in any event, there were those authorities. But as a recruiter in British Columbia, my regulator was BC Employment Standards. So there was, and my clients, as a recruiter, my client is always the employer. My client is never the candidate. Whereas in immigration, my client may be the employer if I'm doing an LMIA or whatever I'm doing there, but more often than not, my client was the employee. And the immigration and refugee protection regulations say you can't compel somebody to hire you. So it became a very delicate and very careful and very, I had to get it all in writing that I was following all the proper procedures along the way. And it became a delicate balance. And I just fell in love with immigration law. So I was a recruiter for 10 years and I loved it. I did a great job at it. I made a good living at it and it was great. But I was really happy to sort of close off that recruiter side because it's like wearing 2 different hats. I have to think from the employer perspective. I used to even divide up my days. If I was recruiting one day, that's all I did was recruitment work. I did not do immigration work that day because I had different perspectives. I found it difficult to do both.
Well, it's funny, and you were kind of a predecessor in a way because that's an issue right now between so many people who wear both hats and taking on the same challenges and struggles that you did. So finally, before we go into our next question, you're in Western Canada, but you are somewhere on the East Coast. Tell us a little bit about that.
That I'm from the East Coast?
Yeah, tell us a little bit about where you're from, because that's
I'm from Cape Breton, proudly from Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. Should I turn on my Cape Breton accent? I don't know if I can. Yeah, I'm born and raised in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. And then I went to Halifax for university. And then I moved to Western Canada when I was all of about 23 or 24 years old.
Wow.
And I'm still a proud Caper. I think my background in Cape Breton and that's who I am. You can take the girl out of Cape Breton, but you can't take Cape Breton out of the girl. I think it's done me a world of good from an immigration perspective as well, because I'm a very straight shooter. I'm really blunt. I'm really freaking funny.
This is true.
And, I think my maritime sense of humor, because you're a maritimer too, Mo.
Right.
Sarcasm is our first language. It just does. I do great with Irish, British, and Australian clients and clients from New Zealand. They all have a great sense of humor. Whereas, because they speak my language, they speak sarcasm. So, I think it's done well for me.
Right.
So, but yeah.
Well, okay. Thank you for sharing that side. So this brings me to my next question. We've sort of heard your story, how you entered the profession. You've been doing this for 15 years. So along the way, I'm sure there's been some great challenges, and you talked a little bit about them before we went on air, but what would you say for you has been your biggest challenge, and how have you solved it, or maybe how are you tackling it?
Biggest challenge? The
Yeah.
challenges, I think, change as you get as your career progresses. So I think my biggest challenge at first was imposter syndrome. And I immigration law is much bigger than anybody thinks it is. And I think that when I was in the course, I realized how large it was. And I knew that I could not become a master of all things in immigration. So I had to pick what I wanted to master. And I had already run and operated a successful business. So I already had some background in business that a lot of people didn't have that entered this profession. I already knew how to run a business. I knew about marketing. I knew about accounting. I knew about a lot of things. But marketing to a completely different audience when you don't have any experience. For me at the time, gaining practical experience was my biggest challenge. And because I know how to do those other things, I knew how to build a business, but it was like starting over in a way. And I needed the practical experience because I knew the theory, but I just didn't know how everything worked. So I utilized the listserv. I utilized people that I knew. I had connections. I was fortunate in a lot of ways that I had connections. Friends of mine are I have lawyer friends who practice immigration law, and I'm not shy. Of course, we know that about me. I'm not shy. I'll ask anybody, and I ask friends like, "Hey, let me work on something. I'll do it for free, but I need this practical experience because it's going to pay off for me in the long run." So I think in my first couple of years of consulting, number one, gaining that practical experience. Number two, marketing to a different audience. And, what could I sell myself based on? I didn't have all the experience of my colleagues. And so I had to find a group of people who would take a chance on me. And building that business, and then obviously it was also like when you're starting over, when you're starting a new business like something like this, it's a financial struggle at first too, because you're not this established. You just have to keep working at it. You just have to keep going and keep working at it and keep believing. And then confidence in my first few years, because immigration law is so complex and it's so large that, there were times where I was like, why would they trust me? I am researching all this. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm asking all kinds of questions. I'm utilizing every connection that I have, but I don't feel confident. And confidence just comes with experience. Like if I could tell younger me, then it would just be patient, get through it, keep doing it, keep doing your best, and keep doing everything that I was doing. I searched out mentors. Like I was very aggressive in trying to learn more about immigration law, and I'm glad I was. I think that was a big challenge. Especially the first 2 years, all of
So,
those combined.
so, and I can certainly, relate to what you're saying. I mean, some of our other podcasters have talked about that.
Yeah.
Somebody else said their biggest one was self-doubt, which I think is very similar to imposter syndrome. And I kind of like the takeaways that you said there. You've got to ask, because the worst somebody can say is no, and then sort of move on to the next one is build that network and connections. So, once you
And
got
network
established,
and join your colleagues, because this can be a lonely profession.
for sure.
Yeah.
So once that was your biggest challenge, starting off. So what would you say maybe mid-career? So I know a lot of people who sort of they're in maybe 4 or 5 years and they're not sure if they want to scale their business or if they should develop a niche. How about for you? When you were sort of several years in, what might have been your challenge then?
One of the biggest steps I think I made was when I think about my 5th year of practice. I was on my own. I had no assistants, and it was either I grow my business or I'm just going to stay where I'm at. And I knew I wanted to grow my business at that time. And I knew in order to grow my business, I had to take a chance and hire somebody because there's only so many hours in the day. And I was already working beyond my capacity. But I knew that I could do more if I had a really good assistant. But I was very afraid of suddenly I was going to have that overhead that I didn't have. But I took a chance on me. One thing that I might not have had confidence in the first couple of years of my solid knowledge of immigration law. But I've always had confidence in me. I know that if I work hard enough that I can do what I set out to do. So I had to get over that hurdle of hiring somebody and hiring the right person as well. So to assist me, and my business sort of like it doubled overnight, and then it doubled again the following year. And so it was obviously the right decision for me, but that was a big decision for me. Was, oh my gosh, am I going to take on somebody's salary now when when you're self-employed, you're always worried about where next month's rent is going to get paid from, or where's the next client coming from. You never have that 100% confidence that they will just automatically be knocking at your door. So
Well, that's true, right? They
yeah,
say as an entrepreneur, not only are you an immigration consultant, you're also an entrepreneur, a business person,
absolutely.
and an entrepreneur involves risk taking, right?
Yeah.
Um, not risking your client files, not about that. But it's about, in your
Taking a
case,
risk on yourself.
yeah, in knowing that you have to generate enough income to be able to pay somebody else and trust somebody with your work and your files.
Yeah.
Because I know you like to maintain control.
I am very much a control freak. But I also knew that that person who was going to be my special person, my assistant, that I was going to have to put the time and effort into training them well. Because any failure of theirs is ultimately, it comes back to me. The buck stops with me. If I let something get through that has a mistake in it, even though they may have made the mistake, I let it get through. It has my name on it, so the buck stops with me. So I had to also be willing to relinquish control and to trust in and to train and to recognize where if somebody was weak in some area because repeated mistakes were being made, it was like, well, then I didn't train them well enough on that. They don't understand that. So had to be accountable, but I also had to have a big belief. I think that was like growing my business. That was a big deal for me midway through.
So I know you're at a different stage in your career now.
Yeah.
Um, but now that we've sort of heard a bit of your story and some of your challenges, what might you say to somebody who's starting off today? You already told us what you might have told yourself when you first started out, but what would you tell somebody who's maybe they're just out of university and they're thinking of doing this as a career, or maybe they're, you know, second or third career in taking the course at Queen's or University of Montreal? What advice would you have to them?
I think, okay, I taught immigration law at UBC for 7 years. And a big portion of that was teaching the practical skills module. And one of the things there's a couple of takeaways or a couple of things that I would say to new consultants or those thinking of joining the industry. Number one, I would say that I don't think that there can be a career quite as rewarding or as frustrating as practicing immigration law. So it has its ups and its downs. But as a new consultant, depending on how you intend do you intend to be self-employed? Do you intend to join a firm? Like, what is your intention? If you intend to be self-employed,
then you need to know how to be self-employed. You need to know how to be an entrepreneur. You must wear numerous hats that have nothing to do with immigration law to run a business. You have to know how to market. You have to know how to properly set up your books. You have to know how to structure and run a business effectively and in compliance with all of our regulations to maintain our license. So if you don't have those skills, you need to get those skills. You either get them yourself or you pay for them. You hire other people. But it's like, the movie Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. That is not the same. That is not how real life works. You could be the best immigration consultant in the world, and if nobody knows about you, you have no clients. And you need to have clients in order to run a business and to be able to feed yourself and your family. That's one big thing. The other big thing, the one big thing is to have the proper business skills, including marketing. People talk about building a business plan. In my view, build a marketing plan. So, and have the money set aside to actually implement a marketing plan and the ability to implement that marketing plan. The second thing that I would say is kind of multifaceted. Number one, create a network. Find mentors. Don't care if you have to beg people. You shouldn't have any shame in that, right? Like, what's the worst, like you said, what's the worst somebody can say? No, it's okay, next. There's plenty of us out there. Your mentors don't have to be limited to consultants. Your mentors could be lawyers. They could be former immigration officers. They could take a variety of criminal lawyers can be mentors if you're focusing on criminality. So I would say find a group of mentors, join things, join CAPIC, join the listserv, network with your colleagues. They'll become your friends. They're your resources for when you're stuck.
Yeah, and further to that, if you're wanting to sort of work on your entrepreneurial skills, you could join business networks and associations to focus on that side as well to see.
Absolutely. Like chambers of commerce, you can, or utilize what you might already bring to the table. If you are a professional in a certain area, now you're changing, tell everybody first of all, what you're doing. I've even gotten referrals from my hairdresser. So tell everybody what you're actually doing. But you do need to build. We hold people's futures in our hands with the work that we do. So we have to be very, very careful. And we have to care, maybe more so than in other professions, because people's futures can be destroyed if we mess up. And so building a strong network of honest, ethical, experienced practitioners around you, whether it's just through email exchange or just getting to know people that if you go to CAPIC in person seminars or other types of seminars, meet people, open up to them. Don't be the shy person in the corner. Seriously, you need to get out there and approach people that you think work in the same areas that you do, and don't be afraid to ask questions of them. Don't feel like, oh, well, I'm just bothering them. Most of us that are experienced, that have been around for a long time, the only stupid question is the one you don't ask. So come to us and ask us questions if we practice in your area. So my other takeaway is, don't try to be an expert in all things. You can't. When I first started practicing, I decided on a couple of areas of practice that I wanted to, they were of the most interest to me. They were also based on my past experience, what I brought to the table, that I felt like, okay, I can utilize past skills and experience. It will, to work in these fields, I feel most comfortable.
I didn't try to do refugees. I didn't try to do entrepreneurs. I didn't try to do criminal inadmissibility, medical inadmissibility. I didn't try to be everything to everybody. I decided, okay, this is where I'm going to work, and I'm going to work and work and work in these. And once I've done, 5 to 10 of these, then I'm going to work outwards and decide what else do I want to take on? What else do I want to learn?
And you started on LMIAs and the economic programs, right?
I started with sponsors, family class sponsorship, spousal common law partner. And I started with, they weren't LMIAs then though, Mo, they were LMOs. Remember?
Yep.
And BC provincial nominee and Canadian experience class. So even within the BC provincial nominee class, it was only entry level, semi-skilled in that stream, as well as the skilled worker stream. So even that was small. And then Canadian experience class. And then I just sort of branched out, and those things became bigger as well. And then I fell into, I don't know, about 6 years in, I fell into criminality and TRPs, and that was just by accident, but I love that. And I love having expertise in something that is sort of the abnormal, right? Like when you think about the normal, it's the CEC application, it's the work permit, it's an LMI. These are normal, they're normal applications, especially family class. People, no matter what's happening in an economy, people are still going to fall in love and get married. And that's how you recession proof your business too, is build a family class practice, spousal common law sponsorships, because it's bread and butter, no matter what's going on in an economy. So there's a big takeaway for anybody, even if you don't enjoy family class and you don't envision that for yourself, make that a part of your business.
That's a really good piece of advice, to pick something.
It is one of those things. It's sort of like, how fast food is recession proof, because you might cut out going out and spending $50 for dinner, but you'll treat yourself to $15 at McDonald's. You will, right? So it's how to recession proof your practice.
Yeah. And that's a good point, because I remember talking to some consultants over COVID, and, when people couldn't travel and, people were so worried about making a living, it was the family class stuff and the more regular kind of stuff that kept them.
Oh my God, I was so busy during COVID. Like I had one that the first month, April of COVID, it was really relaxed, and I was like, oh, okay. So, but then after that, it just was nuts. I did so many LMIAs. It was crazy.
Well, you know what? I think that's because a lot of people were at home, and maybe they would have time to sort of look at those options. Roxanne, thank you for really some numerous takeaways and pieces of advice that you've given. Lots to unpack here. I guess my last question is,
sure,
and you've probably heard it already. So if you were looking back 15 years ago, would you do it all over again? Would you take the same journey?
Absolutely, 100%. One of the biggest things that I did that I feel really proud of, for about 4 to 5 years, I created this group of colleagues. We called it the Saturday group. And we met every Saturday, and we would talk for hours about our ongoing cases, and we would help each other out. And, through that, I just have gotten to know hundreds of wonderful people. And they've gotten to know me, and that's how, I've always, me, Mo, I've always been active in education. And it's so important. But I found, not only from a career satisfaction perspective, because I've literally helped thousands of people come to Canada and had so many different types of challenging cases that I've won and that have been really crazy and off the wall. But it's the network, it's the people that I've met, these people like you, like many of our other colleagues who are now my lifelong friends, and it's that connection, and that connection of people with strong ethics, and who just, we know how lucky we are here.
Yeah. I think you talked about in the beginning how, immigration can be both a rewarding and frustrating career process, but it can also be a validating career, in the network. like you, I've made some of my very best friends through the profession. It becomes a passion. And
it absolutely is a passion. One of the things I said to one of my instructors when I was taking this program is, I don't just want to be good at this, I want to be great at it. We're so fortunate, me in particular. I was born in Canada by accident of birth. And I never knew how lucky I was until I traveled and then started practicing immigration law. And it's really hard to get into Canada.
it is.
It's very, very hard. And, people out on, the street, they don't understand how difficult it is. And they also, you probably think this too. I think clients are incredibly brave. Can you imagine uprooting your life and your family and leaving the country that and moving to another country and having to start all over? And maybe you don't even speak the language. Like, there's just so many challenges.
Yeah, so brave.
So brave. And I feel very fortunate. I would absolutely do it all over again. I might have better work-life balance if I was going to change up a few things, but I have no regrets. The frustrating side of immigration, I blame IRCC for that. So I don't see it. It's just frustrating.
It is.
Yeah.
I guess some would say IRCC has kept us in business. Well, Roxanne, I am so glad that you made the leap into the immigration world, and that you have done you've done so much, you've contributed so much. We are so very lucky to have you on this side. I want to thank you for your time today, and I hope
thank you, Mo. And listen, you are the template for somebody who wants to give back to the profession. Like, really, you are the template for that. I have nothing on you.
Well, thank you very much. Well, I want to say to our audience, final words. We hope that you can take from this Roxanne's passion, her energy, the validation, the gratification, and that you get the same kind of reward, both, being able in terms of making a living and on feeling the same kind of reward, I guess, and knowing that you make a difference for your clients. So thanks again, Roxanne. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Mo.
Thank you to all of you out there, and we'll see you at the next one. Bye-bye.